And a very happy Friday to you at 12:07 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's across the glass.
John, there are so many Bay Area politicians that are considering running for Nancy Pelosi's seat. Matt Haney's looking at it, and it turns out London Breed is looking at running for that seat.
If you are not here, FOMO.
She is the modern-day Heel-Hauser.
Now, I do have to just warn you, because you sent me something last week. That poster that's going around that says Chesa Boudin for Congress is fake.
Okay. In my defense, I was in Brazil at the time, and I was probably drunk.
As far as we know, Chesa Boudin is not thinking of running for Congress.
Too many caipirinhas. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. Well, we keep learning more details about the former chief of staff of California Governor Gavin Newsom. Her name is Dana Williamson, and she's been charged with crimes from the federal government, who says that she put her paw on the till and she was taking money that didn't belong to her, and it was illegal.
She was taking money out of campaign accounts, including one campaign account that had a couple $100,000 in it from Javier Baccaria when he was serving in the federal government. And used some of that money for a big old fancy birthday party in Mexico?
And she was buying a bunch of very expensive handbags. I brought that up yesterday. And that's not something that's unique to her. If there's any ladies out there in the audience that could explain to me why someone would pay an insane amount of money for a bag, please explain it to me, because I do not understand the concept of that, even if you can afford it. But if you can't afford it, to take money from a brain-dead politician and then to use it to buy yourself a fancy bag that you might end up in prison over.
Well, typically a fancy bag, it's not about the utility of the bag. It's not about what the bag can hold. It's an accessory. And the job of an accessory is to divert the eyes from other places.
Well, maybe. I can see why she needs that. I can imagine paying a lot of money if you're buying one of Mary Poppins' carpet bags. You can put anything you want in there. We got a chandelier over here. We've got a box set of The Godfather. What do you need? Oh, Mentos. Look at that.
For more on the charges for Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff, Dana Williamson, here's a report from ABC 10 in Sacramento.
And we are learning new details tonight about Governor Newsom's former chief of staff, now facing 23 charges related to fraud. Dana Williamson is accused of co-conspiring in a scheme to siphon money from a dormant campaign account belonging to Javier Becerra.
And by the way, there's no way this is the first time they've done this.
No. And what's crazy to me is this is what so many people in California politics do. They use those accounts as slush funds. Eric Swalwell, who now might be running for governor, we'll get to that later on, is notorious for this. He represents the East Bay in the Congress. No Republican is ever going to beat him. Yet he's a constant presence on cable news, so people send him money. He is able to raise substantial amounts of money for re-election when there's no credible threat that could take him out. So what does he do with his campaign account? Well, that's when he buys the first-class tickets. That's when he buys the luxury hotel rooms. That's when he buys the Uber Blacks. You use it to subsidize your lifestyle. It's like your entire life is one great big showcase showdown number one.
I got to run for office. Think of the points.
Javier Becerra. ABC 10's Becca Habegger is joining us live in studio. And Becca, you have been digging into this case all day today.
Yeah, Alex, the Sacramento Bee first broke this story yesterday, and since then it has made national headlines. Now, to be absolutely clear, neither Newsom nor Becerra are accused of any wrongdoing in this case.
Yet.
Supporters of Williamson say they think President Trump is trying to find dirt on Newsom, his political foe.
Whoa.
When do they think this investigation started?
It started when Biden was in the White House and Kamala Harris was the vice president. This didn't happen overnight.
And that Williamson allegedly got taken down in the process.
No, you guys can contact the attorney.
This was the scene outside the federal courthouse in Sacramento Wednesday as Dana Williamson, flocked by supporters and journalists, left the building after a court appearance.
And was blocking that bike lane.
She pissed off a guy on a Schwinn.
This was the scene outside the federal courthouse in Sacramento Wednesday as Dana Williamson, flocked by supporters and journalists, left the building after a court appearance. This former chief of staff for Governor Newsom faces 23 charges in this grand jury indictment made public Wednesday, including bank fraud, wire fraud, and subscribing to false tax returns, as well as making false statements to the FBI.
I don't know the facts of the case, but I do know this, that we've seen this administration go overboard, weaponizing both the FBI and the Department of Justice.
This investigation started way before.
Who is this dummy?
Oh, you'll know him.
They showed up at her house with a SWAT team, with guns and shields. They put her teenage son in handcuffs. This is not normal behavior.
And you should have seen what the FBI did to Shangy. They wouldn't let her get dressed by herself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
They thought she was going to try to slip a USB drive somewhere.
For the Department of Justice, or FBI.
The FBI showed up and Shangy was naked.
Topless.
For the Department of Justice, or FBI, for white-collar allegations. And I think they're trying to squeeze her and other people to get back at Governor Newsom.
Longtime Sacramento-based Democratic strategist and political consultant Steve Maviglio.
That's who's defending Dana.
Okay. Someone who has worked with her in the past. They're going to say that this is a political persecution. But wait a minute. Isn't Baccaria already claiming to be a victim, saying this was a quote-unquote gut punch?
Considers Williamson a friend.
Dana's a very close friend, but she's also a colleague. I worked with her for a couple governors and also in the private sector.
He says he believes his...
So, were you doing this crap too?
Well, we know at least two of her friends allegedly were doing it.
Baccaria's chief of staff and a lobbyist.
He says he believes his friend, who has pleaded not guilty to the indictment. A grand jury accuses her and co-conspirators of orchestrating a scheme to steal approximately $225,000 from a dormant campaign account of former Health Secretary Javier Becerra. That's California's former Attorney General, who was serving at the time as U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary under then-President Biden.
That wasn't his name and that wasn't his job. Can we get it right, people?
For Secretary of Health and Education Service, I nominated Javier Baccaria.
This guy, Steve Maviglio, he's the first person besides Izzy who I've seen publicly come out and talk about the virtues of this woman, because everyone else I've seen has talked about what a nasty witch she is.
Oh, that comes up later in this piece, too.
Court documents say this spanned February of 2022 through September of 2024. Williamson served as Newsom's chief of staff for about 2 years, leaving in November of 2024. Alleged co-conspirator...
And apparently she left when she let them know she's under criminal investigation.
But then Newsom put out statements talking about how wonderful she was after he understood she was under investigation.
Alleged co-conspirators include Becerra's former chief of staff, Sean McCluskey, and registered lobbyist Greg Campbell. Both men took plea agreements and are due in court Friday. The indictment says Williamson claimed more than $1 million in business deductions on her taxes for what were actually personal expenses.
Oh, boy, doesn't that sound familiar?
Any of those bags end up on that list?
That included private jet travel, stays at luxury hotels, home decor, and designer handbags.
Bingo!
As someone who knew Dana for many years, who worked with her, did not have a particularly good relationship with her, full disclosure, this is not surprising to me at all.
Gil Duran used...
See, we're getting both sides of the story.
That seems to be the story I'm hearing from everyone.
Gil Duran used to work with Williamson. In an interview Wednesday with CNN's Alex Michelson, he called her a bully and power-hungry.
This was how she operated, like a mafia boss, and now she's being treated like a mafia boss. The only reason Dana Williamson acted the way she did for so many...
I wonder if there were any phone calls between her and Matt Mahan when he was campaigning up and down the state for Prop 36 and she was trying to get that thing killed.
Oh, I'm sure he's got some stories.
The only reason Dana Williamson acted the way she did for so many years And what led to this situation was that she felt she could act with impunity.
Both Newsom and Becerra have issued statements distancing themselves from Williamson, but pointing to the importance of the justice process playing out fairly. ABC 10 reached out to Williamson's attorneys Thursday and did not hear back, but one told the LA Times he objects to federal officials' handling of his client's arrest, calling the sudden arrest operation grandstanding.
But that's how the FBI always operates. Did they complain when this happened to Shang?
They did it to Roger Stone.
Hell, they just did it to Brian Acevedo of the San Leandro City Council.
We got a tip yesterday morning that there were about to be charges filed against a former governor's office officials.
Nicole Nixon is California politics reporter at the Sacramento Bee and one of 3 reporters who broke the story Wednesday afternoon.
This story raises a lot of questions just about this culture of consultants and lobbyists,
You mean business as usual in Sacramento?
And what's funny is you look at this list of people. How many of them have ties to public utilities here in California, Randy?
Most of them.
Paying themselves and using their relationships with each other and public officials to enrich themselves. So I think that this is definitely something that we'll be looking into in the next few weeks.
Dana Williamson had so much power in the California Democratic Party that there's a statue of her daughter.
They have to put this story in.
Another really weird aspect to this story.
That there's a statue of her daughter on top of California Democratic Party headquarters in Sacramento.
That's right. The California Democratic Party thought it would be a great idea to spend money on a statue of a little girl on top of the building so, quote, little girls would have something to look up to.
This claim caught our attention, so we looked into it. Indeed, there is this statue called Persist on top of the party's headquarters in Sacramento. It was installed in 2017, shortly after this similar statue called Fearless appeared in New York City, staring down the bull on Wall Street. A source tells ABC 10 Williamson's daughter did serve as the model, but Persist was simply the California Democratic Party's female empowering nod to this East Coast counterpart, not an ode to Williamson.
Then why'd they use Williamson's daughter, who I wonder if she even had a say in this?
Yeah, you don't have to use her daughter if it's not a plum for mom. You could use any number of generic people out there. Hell, you could have AI do it.
I reached out today to both the California Democratic Party and GOP. Neither opted to comment for this story, which we will continue to follow. Alex.
All right, Becca, thank you. And the federal indictment lists 4 other co-conspirators that Becca just mentioned. One of them is Sean McCluskey, a longtime aide to former health secretary and gubernatorial candidate Javier Becerra. The indictment.
But he loves this going in the middle of his campaign.
We just keep losing candidates for governor right and left, don't we?
As soon as Prop 50 ended, Villaraigosa started going on the attack against Becerra, started putting out all these campaign ads and videos saying how many people Becerra killed during COVID.
The indictment alleges that Dana Williamson developed a plan with McCluskey to siphon money from one of Becerra's dormant state campaign accounts. McCluskey signed a plea agreement on October 30th, admitting to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and then wire fraud. That's according to court filings. Lobbyist Greg Campbell also signed a plea deal. He admitted to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to defraud the United States.
And I'd love to look into what legislation that guy was instrumental in getting passed. What connections does that lobbyist have?
Did you see that part of the deal to give her bail is that she can't consume alcohol?
That's an interesting one.
Is that normal?
So does the ankle monitor also count as a blood alcohol monitor?
Alexis Podesta, another co-conspirator, is a well-known Sacramento Democratic political consultant who serves on the State Compensation Insurance Fund. Campaign finance records show a total of $18,000 from the dormant Becerra account to Podesta Company between 2023 and 2024. Podesta is not facing charges and is cooperating with federal investigators.
That money was going everywhere.
And by the way, when you're a cabinet official, you're not supposed to be spending money on politics. That's illegal. It's a violation of the Hatch Act, which is why he's claiming to be a victim.
Gut punch.
he has to be a victim because if he consented to any of this, then he was breaking the law.
He wants to look at this situation and say, I'm not Ipe, I'm Shohei.
And if he's claiming to be a victim, how can their defense be it's Donald Trump going after his political enemies? None of this looks good for any of them. Boy, that's Steve Maviglio. He's going to be in a world of hurt if his friend gets convicted.
Have you noticed a trend in the last few years of just how many cases of rampant corruption there have been in the state? And it's the feds that find this out, and the state attorney general is very quiet about all of this.
Gee, I wonder why. And who was the AG before our current load?
Javier Becerra.
That's right. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, the weekend is almost here, and I have a feeling people are going to be spending a lot of time sitting in traffic on these wet freeways. If you want to listen to us on Saturday or Sunday, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. Maybe it's the Apple Podcasts app. Maybe it's iHeart, Spotify. Maybe it's YouTube. That's where I watch all my podcasts and listen to them. Search for The John Phillips Show. Hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. Do a Google on the YouTube. Get the free KABC app. Get the free KSFO app. Get the trifecta. Get the free KMJ Now app. We're on that station Saturdays at 2. So many different ways to listen live to our stations and download all the podcasts. It's a great time this weekend to do some house cleaning because you're going to be stuck inside. So listen to us while you
Scrub it.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number. 1-800-222-5222.
You're getting distracted by the TV.
I'm not going to say who it is, but there's a man on TV right now that looks just like Sandy Duncan. It would be rude and insulting for me to reveal who it is, so I'm not going to do that because I'm not that kind of person.
You know how many people are going to text you asking who you're talking about?
Oh, 100%. What are you going to do? All right. This next story reminds me of a joke, and I don't know why I remember this joke, but I distinctly remember being, I don't know, I was a teenager or a child, whenever, and I was watching Jay Leno on The Tonight Show, and it was on the day that it was revealed that McDonald's would start accepting credit cards, because it used to be that if you bought a meal at McDonald's, you had to pay in cash. They would not accept credit cards. And then McDonald's decided that they were going to start accepting credit cards, and it became a big joke. And the joke was, I can't afford a Big Mac, let me finance it. Will you give me a line of credit so I can buy a Big Mac? And I remember Leno did a whole bit on it. I wish I could find it. If one of you finds it on YouTube, email it to us at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Maybe we'll play it later on.
Well, and there's a new version of that where, I don't know if you've seen the meme going around, but it's a picture of a Chipotle burrito, and it says, pay in 4 easy payments with Klarna.
And now there is the idea that you can finance a home. If you can't afford to get into a home on a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage, maybe you can get in with a 50-year mortgage.
How many people that get into those are not going to be alive by the time the house pays off?
Very few. Because you don't even start looking until you're in your 20s, right?
Nowadays, the average age for the first-time home buyer is their early 40s.
Okay, so you add 50 to that, you're talking about someone in their mid-90s.
Yeah.
That's a bad idea. Don't do that.
For more on the idea coming out of the federal government for a 50-year mortgage, here's KTVU, Fox 2 in the Bay.
Over the weekend, President Trump endorsed a suggestion to create 50-year-long mortgages, 60% longer than the traditional 30-year mortgages, all as a part of an effort to combat higher home prices and interest rates. Well,
Hey, the payment's going to be $200 cheaper, but you'll be paying it off for another 2 decades.
So bad.
Well, that drew a lot of criticism after the increased cost to home buyers were actually calculated. KTVU's Tom Vakar joins us from San Rafael with those numbers and them pretty dramatic numbers, Tom.
Very interesting numbers. Now, though many people actually do inherit homes these days that have some mortgage on them, if this goes through, a lot more people would inherit those kinds of homes with a lot more debt on them. The president appears to think that a 50-year mortgage, that's 600 monthly payments.
Yikes.
Oh, my God. I feel like I need a drink just listening to that.
Is worth it.
All it means is you pay less per month. You pay it over a longer period of time. It's not even a big deal. I mean, you know, you go from 40 to 50 years.
For home buyers, it is a very big deal. We spoke with some Larkspur Ferry passengers.
I think it's kind of a crazy idea, in particular because of how much interest you pay over that entire life of the loan. So if it were me, I would not be interested in that.
Why pay even more than you have to? I mean, if you work it out over 30 years versus 50 years, I'm sure it's a lot more expensive for you.
Brit or Welsh?
I think that's British.
Minor solution to a very major problem, particularly when you think about the additional interest you're paying over 50 years. It's completely not worth it.
Fifth Gabadian is Senior Vice President of Lending at Origin Point Lending, writing loans for a quarter century.
50 is brand new. Have not heard of it. This is completely new.
There is one major plus.
The advantage of the 50-year mortgage is that it reduces your monthly payments, so it's easy.
Yeah, but by how much? Because one of the other things that I saw is that the 50-year mortgage would have a higher interest rate than the 30.
I don't see how anyone wins here.
Easier to qualify for.
Well, I don't even think the lender wins, because when the original homeowner dies and they pass off the debt to their deadbeat kids, they can't afford the payment.
Here is something to think about. And I have a feeling, even though you think this is cockamamie and I think it's cockamamie, I think we're headed for uncharted waters here. And I say that because, and I've referenced that Q&A I did with that economist on AI a number of times. And he said AI is going to change the way everything is done in any number of ways. But one of the things that's going to happen is the cost of goods is essentially going to come down to zero because it's going to be so cheap to produce them. It's going to be essentially nothing for strawberries, nothing for flat screen TVs, nothing for clothes, nothing for goods that you would buy. All of that is going to be available to anyone who wants them. That's going to be a net positive. The value is going to be placed on anything that is finite, anything that you cannot make more of. And real estate is one of those things. Until they figure out how to make Waterworld reality, or we figure out how to colonize Mars, there's only a certain amount of land on planet Earth. And if you own a piece of it, that is valuable. And we're also going to live a lot longer because they're going to come up with cures for diseases, and they're going to get rid of chronic illness, and they're going to allow blind people to see again. Everything Jimmy Swaggart promised you, AI is going to figure out how to do. So you're going to live longer in better health. And you're going to have access to whatever goods you want for very minimal money. So owning a home is something that is going to be imperative for anyone with any wealth. And it's going to become harder and harder and harder to do. And because of that, the banks, the lenders, the people with the money, they're going to try to figure out creative ways to get you on the hook for a mortgage because they know that that's what you want. That's the one thing you can't have, and that's the one thing that you want. And so they're going to figure out a way to make bank getting you that.
Easier to qualify for a purchase of a house.
The payment is about 13% less expensive.
I think if...
So if you've got a $3,000 mortgage, it's going to be like a $2,700 mortgage.
How does that impact your life?
The payment is about 13%.
Well, and also, if you're the person that's getting the 50-year mortgage, you're probably also the person that doesn't have a 20% down payment. So then add another $300 to PMI.
And then Ricardo Lara lets your insurance rates go up by 30%.
I'm very kind of sketchy.
The payment is about 13% less expensive.
I think if you're lowering your monthly, you could possibly be freeing up more cash for other things and for other expenses that you may have.
But, says Gobadian, it's way...
$400, that's like 2 dinners.
It's way more expensive in the long run. On a 30-year $1 million loan at 6% interest, you'd pay $2,160,000 in principal and interest, but over 50...
By the way, that's for a 30-year. Already, I feel disgusting.
Oh, doesn't it just, I don't know, give you heart palpitations just hearing numbers that big?
You're paying double for the price of a house with today's interest rates. So if you are locked in at a 2, you're never moving.
I could already feel my blood pressure going up just thinking about that.
Well, let's find out how much that loan costs for a 50.
And interest, but over 50 years, the buyer pays $3,160,000, $1 million more.
It triples the price of the house.
Hard pass.
Now, the value of that home might be very different in 50 years.
Well, in this state, it's probably already burned down by then.
And you'll spend a lot more time underwater with a 50-year as you gather equity far slower.
Yeah, that's the other big problem. The beginning of the loan is almost all interest.
And by the beginning, we mean the first 35 years.
That's because payments in the early years go mostly to interest, not paying off the principal.
You don't want to keep this loan for that period. It's a starter loan to get you to qualify.
It's a product that we know you're going to have to refi at some point.
Of those who buy the 50-year loan, how many of them do you think get their insurance through Adriana?
If you get the 50-year loan, do you have to go through a medical exam to make sure you can make it those 50 years? Because me at this point in my life, they'd probably qualify me. But me 6 months ago, topping near 300 pounds, they might not even give me a 15.
You don't want to keep this loan for that period. It's a starter loan to get you to qualify, and you want to get out of it.
In other words, refinance when rates go down for less interest and a shorter loan. And especially note this.
75% of people sell or refinance within the first 5 years.
Since most first-time home buyers now average 40 years of age, it would take until their early 90s to pay it off.
And when you're in your early 90s, besides being in Congress, what are you going to have going on?
And it doesn't address the housing affordability crisis whatsoever.
Now, this is neither etched in stone or law, but when you think about it, 40-year loans are already available if you didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't even realize 40 was a thing.
No, me either.
But this is a step much, much further. Claudine, back to you.
And Tom, as you just said, a lot of steps would have to happen and people would have to get behind it. Banks would have to feel comfortable giving those loans out. And so this may be a talking point, but we're really far off from actually ever seeing them being offered.
Well, I mean, it's possible banks would have to really assess if they want to have money out that long, and then they would also have to assess where those funds would come from and who'd be the investors in them and all of that stuff. So it's a very, very complex thing. And again, we have a tradition here of 30 years, and that's pretty much etched in stone at this point in time. So it would take some time to do some convincing.
Well, there you go. There's the latest on the idea being floated to deal with affordability in this country. 50-year mortgage.
Would you sign on to a 50-year mortgage? I wouldn't. 800-222-5222 is the number. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Will writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. The genius behind this idea of a 50-year loan is not only will the extra 20 years of payments add an extra $300,000 to a $450,000 home, the extra 20 years ensures you're also buying your final resting place.
For a 50-year mortgage, what are the odds you're going to be with the person you were with when you bought it? You might be on marriage number 4. Or if you're Drew Peterson, marriage number 8.
Your prenup's going to need a prenup.
If you're Drew Peterson, by the time you pay this off, your kids will be killing their spouses. All right, let's go to the phones and welcome Cheryl in Lake County. Cheryl, hello.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call, you guys. I wanted to give my sort of opinion, that my thoughts when I heard about the 50-year mortgage. Scary. But I would think where it would be good to do would be if you went and got yourself the old-fashioned checkbook and you made double the total payments. And just make yourself send those off, and perhaps if that's your only opportunity to get into the housing market, you can do something like that. But don't sit there and make single payments. And then, of course, if you come into any kind of lump sum, put it on the mortgage. And it's so sad that people will be so desperate to do the business like this. That's all I had.
Well, thank you for the call, and I think that sentiment is what's driving this, where so many people who want to be homeowners just can't do it. The value of homes are through the roof, and people just aren't making enough money to come up with 20% down, which is a substantial amount.
I don't think I know anybody in my generation, in my specific age range, that owns a home that didn't get help from their parents or their in-laws, myself included.
I received a loan from my dad when I bought my house, but the rest of it I came up with. But I've worked since I was a teenager, and I've usually had 2 or 3 jobs at once the whole way through. And I'm the cheapest person on planet Earth, so I just stock money away.
That's what it is.
True story. After that debacle in Las Vegas, where I was using the old equipment, Randy had been on my case and on my case and on my case to get a new microphone. And I said, I'm waiting for a stock to come in. And when the stock comes in, I will buy it. Because then the money is there.
The mic was $250.
I had the money. I just didn't want to pay for it. Let's go to Steve in Laguna Hills. Steve, hello.
Hi, gentlemen. You guys have entirely nailed it, both Randy and John, from your respective positions in life. I'm a long Southern California native, 71 years old. My daughter's 34. She graduated UCLA Anderson, Juris Doctor, MBA, makes $200,000 a year, and she cannot. And like a lot of her peers, they don't have the down to acquire property. I don't have the liquidity. I've been very generous to them, but I don't have the liquidity to help in that respect. I do think that this may be an entree. I think, Southern California cost of housing is really skewed. And I found in our travels, I'm a cruiser like you, John, in Bali and Portugal, you've got all these Gen Z folks. A lot of them are digital nomads, and some are successful. They're pulling down, like $300,000 a month. But in Bali, the cost of housing and living is nothing, or Vietnam or Portugal. And you have my son said, I'm freaking out of here, Dad, as soon as if I can find a way to do that, because the acquisition cost is just insane. My dad bought an acre and a half on Point Doom in a 4,000 square foot spec house for 63 grand back when I was growing up. I bought a house in the Palisades for 500 grand back in the day.
Let me tell you this, to the point that you just made about Vietnam and Bali and other places. I was in Brazil last week. You know what an Uber across town cost?
Tell me.
$3.50. If you go out
absolutely.
You go out for a nice meal, and the food there was phenomenal. You go out for a nice meal. There was a pizza place right next to the hotel. For a pizza and a salad and a bottle of wine and a dessert, it was $25.
John, that's why a ton of these old geezer patrols, like I'm not in this situation, but a bunch of these guys that are 60 plus on Social Security, got a divorce, don't know what to do, they've gone to Thailand or gone to Vietnam. And if you go on YouTube,
it's not the only reason they went to Thailand.
I know. Come on, don't go there. But there, the happy ending is
Thanks for putting a button on that story, Steve. Thanks so much for the call. We appreciate it.
Well, thank God we're up against a hard break. Otherwise, we'd hear about the lady boys. All right. If you're on hold, stay there. You want to weigh in, 800-222-5222. What do you think of a 50-year mortgage? That's the new idea that's being batted around. I think it's an awful idea. What say you? At 800-222-5222. It's the John Phillips Show.